Hey everybody, Dustin Schmidt back here again. And today I want to get a little bit more into the Canon C50, and we're going to do a comparison to the ARRI Alexa Mini. We're going to do a latitude test indoors, so we're just going to get each camera exposed at 18% middle gray according to the manufacturer's specs. And then we're going to do one stop over, a stop at a time until the camera breaks, and then we'll do one stop under and see where the camera breaks going that way. So I'm interested in comparing the Canon C50 to the Alexa Mini because I would like to use both cameras together. So one of the areas that I could see these cameras working well together, the C50 and the Mini, is when shooting anamorphic. I've got a set of Atlas Mercuries. They're a 1.5x squeeze. They look really nice on a sensor that is a little more square, that is more suited to an anamorphic D-squeeze. The Mercuries are nice. You can use them on a variety of different cameras and aspect ratios, but I think they look particularly nice on a camera like the C50, which has a 3.2 open gate mode, so a little more squarish of a sensor. They look great on that. You get a really wide angle view. You get kind of the full character of the Mercuries. And then on something like the Alexa Mini, which has a 4.3 open gate mode, they also look great on that because it is, again, more of a square-ish sensor aspect ratio. So that's where I could see these cameras working well together in my use case. And so what I'd really like to do is run some tests of these cameras together to just see how should I expose them, where is going to be kind of the sweet spot of where they can be pushed. Obviously, I know the Alexa Mini is kind of one of the all-time greats when it comes to camera sensors. That camera has a ton of latitude. You can push it up, you can push it down. You can be more overexposed than some other cameras, and it actually does really well in the underexposure. And so I want to put the C50 in the same scenario and see where does it break, essentially, compared to kind of maybe the A standard for camera sensors. Now, I don't expect the C50 to be on the same level as the Alexa Mini. It shouldn't for the price, but I just need to see where can it be exposed, where can it be pushed. And that's kind of the thing with any of these new cameras, is as long as you're lighting well for the camera, there's a lot that you can do with most cameras out there. Now, a little bit about the methodology. How are we conducting these tests? We are going to expose each camera at the manufacturer's recommended 18% gray. We're going to do that at 800 ISO for both cameras. There is as you push each camera up and down in terms of ISO, where those stops are allocated changes, but we're going to be at 800. And for each of these cameras respectively, if you look at the manufacturer's white papers, both cameras kind of want to be exposed around that high 300s to low 400s range in terms of luma value. That is where it puts 18% gray at an 800 ISO on both the Canon and the Alexa. It's kind of why you can, because they have similar log curves, why you can just slap the ARRI 709 LUT on Canon C-Log 2 footage, and it actually comes out looking pretty nice because the way their log curves are encoded are very similar. Now, some cameras and manufacturers, their log curves are very different than what Canon and ARRI does, but they match up, surprisingly pretty well. Now, that being said, one thing you'll notice when we look at the slates at the beginning of these is that the Canon C50 actually wants a little bit more light to reach 18% gray, to reach the same value on the kind of luma scale as the Alexa Mini. I had to expose the Alexa Mini at a T11 at 800 with the amount of light that I'm using. So both cameras are getting the exact same lighting setup, and the Mini wants to be at T11. The C50 wanted to be at about a T8, T11 split, probably somewhere around T10. So it requires a little more light, the C50 does, to hit the same exposure value as the Mini. So you'll notice that as we go through our overexposure tests, we just open the iris up one stop at a time, but the iris values are not the exact same for each camera. That being said, they are hitting the exact same value on the waveform as we overexpose. Same thing on the underexposure. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to our base exposure level, and then I'm just going to drop one stop ND at a time in front of the camera. Just in a matte box, I've got a 1 through 7 individual, 4x, Panavision filters to increasingly apply one extra stop of light at a time. So we're just going to swap that out as we go, 1 stop, 2 stop, 3 stops, etc., until we reach the breaking point, going down into the shadows on these cameras. So that's kind of a little bit of the methodology. I'll show you a little bit of the setup real quick, and then we'll get into the tests. All right, so here is the camera setup, and we've got the Sigma Cine, 40 mil on the ARRI and the 50 on the Canon. Why the 2 lenses? Well, Super 35 versus full frame sensor. They're both a match set, both have the exact same T-stops. So we're just gonna move camera position a little to get the same field of view on the 2 cameras. So that's our lensing for the test. And this is kind of the view from the seat. Over here for our lighting on the right, we've got a 6x of bleached muzz. And we're going to be throwing a bunch of lights into that. Let's take a look at the lights. So a bunch of aperture lights here. This is all the lights I have. Aperture 60X, Storm 80C, Storm 400X, and a 300X. All set to 5600K. All punching through the 6x just to give us as much exposure as we can. All right, jumping into tests. This is base exposure. Specs are on the slates. Pause if you want to take a closer look at those. This is just our base exposure, and then we're just slapping a 709 conversion LUT on this. No pushing things around at all. Our ARRI standard LUT on the ARRI, and we've got phantom LUTs, Canon to ARRI LUT on the Canon on the C50. So base exposure, both cameras, and we're just cropped and zoomed a little bit for framing purposes. Okay, here we are at 1 stop over. So again, specs are on the slates, and so we're 1 stop over, and we've now pulled things back down to our 18% gray neutral. And everything's still looking good, of course. I am not applying any kind of noise reduction, anything to these. We're just bringing it back to base right now. Obviously, some differences in color between the 2 cameras. You could match these more. Again, for this, I'm putting the Rec 709 light on them. All right, here we are, 2 stops over. And things are still looking great. As expected, both of these cameras can easily handle 2 stops over. And, there's some color differences in the standard way each camera handles colors. It's interesting, the Phantom LUT is supposed to bring it kind of basically exactly to an ARRI look. I've found that's not entirely true. You still have to tweak color a little bit to get there. These are the exact same white balance, same lighting, everything on both cameras. All right, and now here we are at 3 stops over. Again, both cameras still handling this just fine. And I've done nothing but apply the 709 LUT. I think these still look pretty much exactly like the base does. Nothing really standing out to me on either one. Just shows how good I think the C50 is still. Easily handles 3 stops over, but again, it should for a camera of that price. We are really only going to see the differences when we get to the extremes. So as we get there, you will see more and more of a difference. All right, and here we are at 4 stops over. Again, still holding up really good. As expected, the Mini looks great. It's got tremendous overexposure, latitude. The C50's holding well, though. And I don't see anything to complain about on either of these cameras right now. How did we pull this down? We just used the HDR wheels in DaVinci and just pulled them back till we were normalized back to the same base exposure on the waveform. And now we're getting a little more into the upper range here. So we're at +5 stops. And Mini, I think, still looks the same. The C50, I'm starting to see a little bit on the skin. Just a little bit kind of at that peak area of the forehead. And as I turn my head, I think you kind of see it a little bit too. It's just a little touch shiny up there on the forehead where the skin is starting to lose some detail. There you can see it on the cheek and the forehead on the Canon. There's a little bit of a shine, I guess, on the Mini here, but all that skin detail is still there. The C50, I think, is starting to lose it just a little bit. And now we are at actually just 5.5 stops on the Canon, and we're 6 on the Mini. That is because we went from a T1.8 to a T1.5 on the Canon, and the Mini was at a T2 to a T1.5. So the Mini's a full stop or a half stop more exposed than the Canon, and it's still all the details there. The Canon's just 5.5, and you can see the skin is gone. So this is kind of the breaking point for the Canon. And again, it's not even quite as overexposed as it should be to match the Mini. Just kind of ran out of light here, but so there's kind of the max on that. So now we're going to go to the underexposures. This is 1 stop under, and there is no noise reduction put on any of this here. So 1 stop under. I'm already seeing a little bit of chatter at 1 stop under brought back to base. It's still pretty fine. It's nothing that some noise reduction wouldn't clean up. Again, there is no noise reduction on these clips right now. I just wanted to see what it looked like bringing the clips back up. I actually think the Canon looks pretty good. It feels a touch washed out. There's a little more contrast in the Mini, but not too bad. You could shoot either one of these. And now we're at 2 stops under. Not really that great. I think the Mini is doing better here. There's more contrast in that image. There's some chatter, but it feels pretty nice. It feels quote unquote like film grain. There's a little more red kind of in the shadows here of the C50. The image is a lot more washed out, more kind of chromatic noise and stuff going on in the C50. You can see the Mini tends to lean a little more green, and the C50 is a little more magenta. And now we're 3 stops under. Way more noise here. Again, no noise reduction. The C50, I think at this point is pretty much, does not look good at all. Maybe even a touch of banding. The Mini, although it is really pretty noisy here, the contrast is still there. The color is still there. The detail in the image is still there. Again, both of these with some noise reduction, you could bring some of this back, but this is just, hey, here's how the images look without being processed, just bringing them straight back to 18% gray. And now we're 4 stops under. Again, C50, I mean, doesn't look good. Mini still super noisy, but there's detail there. There's contrast, all that. So I would still prefer the Mini image here over the C50. Neither one of these handled the underexposure quite as well as they handled the overs, but I would say the Mini's doing better here. And again, with noise reduction, you can clean some of this up. I'm not showing that right now. This is just the image brought back. And now here we are, 5 stops under. You can see that the C50 is a shadowy reflection of an image. It's kind of ghostly. The Mini doesn't look great either, but you can tell there's an image there at least, I guess. So both these probably way further than I would like to deal with them in any kind of usable situation. And then 6 stops under just for laughs. None of this would be usable, I think, in a real situation. But here it is at 6 stops under, just in case you wanted to see it. So, yeah, kind of wild what starts to happen to these sensors when they have literally no light being sent to the sensor. So, nothing usable here, really. All right, so there's the results. What did you think? I can tell you a little bit about some of my thoughts from reviewing it. Obviously, the Mini handled it better. I liked what the C50 was able to do. It's, you know, kind of what I expected from a mirrorless hybrid, more of a cinema camera in its price range. I think it's going to work very well for the type of stuff that I want to use it for, as a small camera body, with built-in audio, through the XLR handle, good anamorphic options, which is where I'm looking forward to using it, kind of next to the Mini. Pretty good battery life, good codecs, all that kind of stuff. So it hits all the marks for me. I do not typically, when I go to expose my images, try to expose them at 5 stops under or 5 stops over. I try to find the best exposure that I can for the scene, and then I'll probably light around that. So again, I think the camera's going to work just fine for that. But it's nice to see what it can do, right? Like where it starts to break. A couple caveats about a few things. Why didn't I run noise reduction on some of the images that I brought back? Well, because there's a lot of different ways to run noise reduction. There's third-party plugins. There's different options depending on the NLE that you use. Different things that you may or may not want to do based on what your machine can handle. Noise reduction is incredibly intensive on memory and processors and all that kind of stuff, and it'll really kind of bog your machine down. So personally, I don't want to be running a ton of noise reduction on all the stuff that I shoot, because it's going to make the editing experience really bad. So if you would like to do some of those tests yourself, maybe I'll post some TIFFs or something that people can download of the images, and just you can run your own stuff on it. We'll see. Another caveat, why did I shoot the RAW? Well, the RAW out of the C50 is 12-bit versus the 10-bit, compressed codec. I was looking to get the most color information that I can get out of the camera. Obviously, the RAW is noisier. You'd probably get better results from, at least in terms of like noise and stuff, out of a 10-bit codec. I want to shoot the 12-bit. I always want the most color information I can get, and then I'm going to deal with noise and things like that in post if that stuff's bothering me. But I want the detail. I want the kind of stuff that I can get out of the RAW, out of the C50. As far as the Mini's concerned, the Arri RAW I did not shoot. I shot the ProRes Quad 4 XQ, which has just as much color information as the RAW. Is essentially, almost the same in terms of all the metrics that matter, but just way less data intensive. Now, it is not the best setting for anamorphic on the Mini. So again, if I'm going to shoot specifically anamorphic, there are some different settings for that on the Mini. But in this case, I just shot the Quad 4 XQ in the 3.2K. They have a 4:3 aspect ratio that I think is a 2.8K on the Mini. But yeah, so a bunch of things you can do there. But in terms of being able to push the image up and down for these tests, the Quad 4 gives you all the information that you need out of that versus the 12-bit LT RAW, or actually ST RAW out of the C50. So yeah, we shot the ST, not the LT. Yeah, there it is. I would love to continue the conversation down below. If you have questions, comments, go ahead and leave them down there, and I'll try to respond as best I can. You can let me know that it was a great test, or how you would have done it better, and tell me how. So yeah, looking forward to chatting some more, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.